The annual Chin family dinner was in full swing at Golden Palace, the same overpriced Chinese restaurant where we'd gathered every year for as long as I could remember. Uncles boasted about their new Mercedes, aunties flaunted designer handbags, my cousins, naturally, made sure everyone knew exactly how wildly successful they were. Michael, cousin Kevin, called across the lazy Susan, his voice laced with faux concern and thinly veiled superiority. Still taking the bus? I know a few great lease brokers. I adjusted the cuff of my plain white shirt, just enough for the watch beneath to catch the light. The bus works fine. So practical, Aunt Linda chimed in, though with your computer job, surely you can afford better? I almost smiled. My so-called computer job, the tech company I founded, was why I was wearing a watch worth more than everything else in the restaurant combined. Not that any of them would recognize a Philippe Dufour Grande Sonnery minute repeater, only 16 exist, and most collectors wouldn't even know who owns them. Speaking of jobs, Uncle Richard announced, voice booming, Kevin just made junior partner at Goldman, just like his dad. The table erupted in applause. Kevin beamed, adjusting his Rolex, likely a bonus gift, and far less rare than he believed. And you, Michael? My father asked. His tone was familiar, soft, but with that persistent undercurrent of disappointment. Still doing your, what is it, app stuff? Before I could answer, the waiter arrived with more dishes. I reached for the soy sauce, and as my sleeve shifted, the watch caught my father's eye. His chopstick slipped from his hand. That's, he stammered, color draining from his face. That's impossible. Silence settled over the table. My father had collected watches for decades, until the market crash forced him to sell. He knew exactly what he was looking at. Is something wrong? Mom asked, glancing between us. That watch, Dad's voice dropped to a whisper. It's a Dufour Grande Sonnery. Only 16 were ever made. It's worth over $2 million. Depending on the market, Kevin added, suddenly pale, his investment-trained instincts finally catching up. The silence that followed was exquisite. Aunt Linda's designer bag seemed oddly generic. Uncle Richard's Mercedes, practically entry-level. Oh, this old thing? I said, echoing Aunt Linda's earlier line about her Gucci. Picked it up at auction last month. But, how? Mom asked, clearly confused. You take the bus. I sipped my tea, savoring the moment. I take the bus because I'm usually on calls with our Tokyo office. Can't exactly drive and negotiate with Japan at the same time. Tokyo office? Kevin's smirk evaporated. What exactly does your app do? I pulled out my phone, not the newest model, the same one they'd laughed at earlier, and opened our latest valuation report. I slid it across the table to Kevin. We build AI-based trading algorithms, I said. Actually, we probably power some of the systems you guys use at Goldman. Kevin's eyes widened as he scrolled. Uncle Richard leaned over his shoulder, and choked. 10 billion, he croaked. 11.2, I corrected, after last month's round, though you know how volatile valuations can be, right Kevin? His Rolex looked suddenly small. Dad hadn't said a word, he just stared at my Dufour, a storm of recognition and regret on his face. He was the one who'd taught me about watches, about the artistry, the heritage, before he lost everything and declared traditional banking the only safe path. The auction, he said quietly, Christie's, last month. I nodded, anonymous buyer, figured you'd spot it eventually. That was your father's grail piece, Mom whispered. I know, I said, why do you think I bought it? The rest of dinner passed in awkward quiet. Chopsticks clicked against plates, dishes passed from hand to hand. My cousins, usually so eager to list every promotion and accolade, suddenly had nothing to say. Even Kevin stopped mentioning Goldman. Finally, Uncle Richard broke the silence. So, this company of yours, it's doing well, then? Another ping lit up my phone, a notification from our London office. We currently handle around 30% of AI-driven trades across Asia, I said casually. That number should hit 40% after next month's merger. Kevin straightened, banker instincts on full alert. Merger? With who? I smiled. Can't say yet, but I imagine you'll read about it in the Financial Times soon enough. Your firm's on the due diligence team, actually. Kevin went pale. The quantum trade acquisition? That's your company? Dad's head jerked up. Quantum trade? The Singapore firm disrupting Asian markets? Among other things, I replied, keeping it vague. The NDA still had a week to run. Aunt Linda leaned in now. Her earlier snobbery replaced by something that sounded suspiciously like admiration. But Michael, darling, why didn't you say anything? We all thought that I was struggling. I finished for her, dryly, riding the bus because I couldn't afford a car. I adjusted my sleeve again, letting the light glance off the intricate complications of the do-for. Sometimes, I said, real success doesn't need a billboard. Uncle Richard seized the opening. Well, since we're on the subject, my portfolio could use a refresh. Perhaps we could. Apologies, I interrupted smoothly. We're fully funded. Last round was oversubscribed by $3 billion. The silence was instant and absolute. $3 billion in oversubscription, more than all their net worths combined. Mom reached across the table, touching my arm gently. But son, why keep it all a secret, all these years? I looked around the table, the designer bags, the leased cars, the endless humble brags. Because I was building something real, I said, not chasing applause or trying to impress relatives over dinner. Dad was still transfixed by the watch. The auction, he murmured, there was a bidding war, the price shot past estimate. I nodded. I know, I was the other bidder. He blinked. There were two. Realization spread across his face like slow dawn. You drove up the price? I wasn't going to let anyone else get it. I shrugged. It was your dream piece, Dad. Kevin, desperate to claw back some footing, cleared his throat. Well, at Goldman, we always say. I cut him off with a glance at my phone. Actually, your trading desk just migrated to our new algorithmic platform. Internal memo drops Monday. He sank back, visibly deflated. His junior partner glow had dimmed considerably. Aunt Linda pivoted, her tone sugary. Michael, darling, you must join us at the country club next weekend. There's someone I'd love for you to meet. Can't, I said, flying to Singapore. Board meeting. Your jet? Uncle Richard echoed faintly. Just a small one, I replied, though I usually take the bus to the airport, better for the planet. After dinner, while the others were busy collecting designer coats and arguing over valet tickets, Dad followed me outside. The night was crisp, his breath visible as he hesitated beside me. That watch, he said at last, it's the one from my study, the picture I kept on my desk for 20 years. I nodded. Right up until the crash. 2008 had shattered our family's finances, and his dreams. He had sold his collection, traded passion for practicality, and nudged us all into safe careers. Is that why you bought it? He asked, to prove something? I lifted my wrist again, letting the moonphase complication catch the streetlight. Even in the dark, its beauty was undeniable. I bought it because every time I sat in your study as a kid, you told me about this watch. I said, about how only 16 people would ever own it. About how it was more than a watch, it was precision, legacy, the pursuit of perfection. His eyes glistened. When I started the company, I kept that same photo on my desk, not as a symbol of wealth, but of focus, of building something rare, something that lasts. Just then, Kevin and Uncle Richard burst out of the restaurant behind us, phones already pressed to their ears, no doubt calling their brokers, trying to catch up to a game they'd just realized they weren't playing. Aunt Linda was now not so subtly showing my mother photos of her friend's daughter on her phone. Here, I said, slipping off the watch and starting to unbuckle it. It was always meant to be yours. Dad stepped back, visibly shaken. I can't, he said, it's too much. Actually, I smiled, I bought two at the auction. This one's yours, mine's in Singapore. I figured one masterpiece per continent seemed reasonable. His hands trembled as I placed the watch in his palm. Two? But that's $4 million. I shrugged. Roughly what I make in interest every month. Some things are worth more than money. Mom approached, still holding Aunt Linda's phone like a sales brochure. Michael, dear, about this lovely girl. Sorry, Mom, I glanced at my actual phone, the old, unimpressive one that held our secure company tools. I'm already seeing someone. She heads the AI research lab at MIT. We met at a conference where I gave the keynote. Around us, relatives nearly gave themselves whiplash. Dad turned the watch over gently in his hands, studying the craftsmanship. I always wondered, he said softly, why you chose computers over banking. Why not just follow Kevin? Remember what you used to say about this watch? I asked, that it wasn't valuable because of the price tag, but because it represented someone's relentless pursuit of perfection? He nodded slowly. That's what I built, I said, Not just another trading firm, something rare, precise, something that's changing how the entire industry operates. My phone buzzed again. The Singapore exchange would be opening soon, Dad noticed, and smiled knowingly. You should go, he said. Markets wait for no one. Actually, I reached into my coat and pulled out 2 first-class tickets. Why don't you and Mom come to Singapore next week? See what your son's been building all these years. First class? Mom blinked. Of course. On your jet? She asked, almost whispering. No, I said seriously, on the bus. She looked horrified. I grinned, kidding, yes, on my jet. As we said our goodbyes, I overheard Kevin explaining to Uncle Richard why junior partner at Goldman isn't really a big deal anymore. Aunt Linda was suddenly obsessed with tech stocks. My other cousins were hunched over their phones, frantically Googling my company. But all that faded when I turned and saw Dad showing Mom the watch, explaining its complications with the same reverence and passion I remembered from when I was a kid sitting in his study, wide-eyed. Some things are worth more than money. Like the look on your father's face when he realizes his son didn't just succeed, but did it with the values he once feared were lost. I took the bus home that night, same as always, but this time, I spent the ride scrolling through photos of Dad's old collection, thinking about how to rebuild it, one timepiece at a time. Because sometimes, the best kind of revenge isn't showing off your wealth. It's using it to restore what truly matters. And sometimes, just sometimes, taking the bus doesn't mean you're broke. It means you're too busy building an empire to care what anyone thinks of your ride.